Hi everyone, this is Gary Wilson and welcome to tonight's live webinar for the Investor Agent Training Program. Again, welcome to those of you who also have been through flipping for profits or rental problems without the pain. Those are two separate programs, so welcome aboard to you guys. Almost everybody here is a licensee, which is good because we're going to go over tonight how do you actually do the analysis on a flip, and you need to understand this when you're working with investors, because a lot of investors you're going to be working with are going to be new to the business of investing, and you don't want to do the work for them. But if you understand how the work is done, you're going to be able to be their consultant, to be their advisor, to be their guide, which is exactly what you should be doing. You shouldn't be doing that work for them. They should be doing it. You're just simply providing the tools, the information, and the inventory so that they can make better decisions and make wise decisions, and of course make more money. So in any case, without further ado, I want to get started here. Welcome aboard to all the new folks. A little bit of administration here. These are live because of the numbers of people on, usually a couple dozen. We have everybody muted by default. But what that means is you can communicate via your question box, and I will look for the questions and answer them as we go through the webinar. From time to time, I will unmute you. It doesn't seem like we've done that for quite a while, so if there's anybody that feels like they want to have some open dialogue, let me know. But typically, we look for a particular subject matter before we do that. So in any case, welcome aboard. And if you are new, I highly recommend as soon as you get your access to the member section, go online and look for all of the webinars that we have. They're all loaded on there. They're all cataloged by subject matter, and you get to download them onto your computer and keep them on your hard drive. They're yours to keep. You don't just have access to them. You actually purchase the rights to them. So you have it's like having your own library of information. I think there's probably maybe 80 some odd webinars on there. I'm not sure. So in any case, a little bit of a heads up here. I mentioned this a few moments ago before we were recording. I am in New Jersey this week, and next week I will be in Tampa at my own training. So no classes next week, no webinar next week. The following 3 weeks after that, I will be in New Jersey 3 weeks straight, and we will have webinars those 3 weeks. So the next webinar, I believe, is going to be. I'm not sure if Beverly set that up. The week of the 25th, I can't remember exactly what we came up with. I think it's Tuesday night. Well, don't quote me on that. An email will come out from Beverly. So whenever you get the recordings of these emails, you will get the schedule. You will get the schedule of the upcoming webinar. So in any case, let's go ahead and jump into the material here. All right. The main subject of tonight is how to do analysis on flips. And you're going to notice a big difference between tonight and last week. Tonight is going to be more about the physical analysis of a property. And not that financial analysis is not important on flips. It certainly is. It's just not as complex. It doesn't take as much time as it does for rental properties. Okay. So first things first. You definitely want to master this, even though you may be an agent who has no intention of investing. It doesn't matter. You've got to master this so that you know how to work effectively with your flipping clients. Flipping has been and always will be a hot topic. I prefer rentals myself. I've done a lot of flips, so don't get me wrong. I've done both. But there's reasons why I like flips more than rentals. The main thing is I like rentals more than flips, excuse me. The main reason is, financially speaking, I can make money 5 different ways with rentals, okay? I'll make net operating income, which is the cash flow after expenses. I will get appreciation. The properties will appreciate over time, not as much as single-family homes, but they certainly will appreciate. I get depreciation, which is the phantom write-off. In other words, the Uncle Sam gives us the right to write off about 3.41% of the cost basis of a property every year that we own it. Okay, it's a paper write-off. So it's appreciation, depreciation, cash flow. Also get equity, basically a mortgage pay down. In other words, every month the mortgage payment is being paid more and more by the tenants paying me rent. And so I build up more ownership, more equity in the property. It kind of couples with the appreciation, that is. Appreciation is strictly a matter of increased market value. Equity pay down is your mortgage being paid off over time. Okay, the fifth way, though, is I still get to sell the property at some time in the future, maybe 12 years down the road, which is my average hold time. Okay, back to flips, you only make money one time, one way on a flip. It's when you sell the property after it's been remodeled. So you get paid one way, one time, and essentially you shoot the goose that's laying the golden egg. In any case, the basic formula for flipping, okay, is we call it your maximum allowable offer. There's a couple terms here I'm going to go over, so let's do that. We'll get into some of the forms here. In order for to determine your maximum allowable offer, you need to have an understanding of what your ARV is for the subject property. ARV meaning after repair value. It's the same thing as what you believe your market value is for the property in a fully functional state. In other words, ready to move in, everything's clean, freshly painted, all of that. And in the case of flipping, typically you're going to have a lot of remodeling that's been done. But the ARV is the value of the property after all that work has been done, assuming the property is ready to be put on the market and is habitable. Okay, so ARV is a very critical figure. Somebody needs to be doing the work and the analysis and homework on this. In the beginning, you're going to be doing a lot more work and analysis on areas, so you know what a good ARV is for particular types of properties in particular neighborhoods. Okay, and obviously you want to validate that. Always validate it by doing your homework on the MLS, looking to see what sold, how long it took to sell, what the sale price was relative to list price on a number of properties. Okay, and there's lots of reports you can get that show you that information. In any case, ARV is absolutely critical, right? So if you get the ARV right, you're in good shape. If your ARV, if you project your ARV to be too high, a couple of bad things can happen. Number one is you could end up paying too much for a property in the beginning. Number two is when you go to put your property on the market for sale after it's been remodeled, and you projected your ARV to be too high, higher than what the true ARV should be for that area, the property won't sell, at least not for that price. That's very dangerous. Now, having an ARV that's too low is also not good, because if your ARV is being projected at too low of a price, what that will result is in you or your client making offers that are too low for that property, and you'll never get your offers accepted. So you have the ARV has to be spot on, absolutely spot on. It's just like riding a bike, guys. Once you master this, you'll have no problem determining ARV for the different areas. All right. So in any case, let's move on here. By the way, we'll get into this later on. This talks about a 30% cushion. So the general rule of thumb is this: if you have an ARV of $200,000, okay, you cannot have more than $140,000 total into the property. That's purchase plus remodeling. Okay. Now remember, don't be startled here. ARV is the value of the property after it's been remodeled. Okay. You're going to find properties out there that are listed for sale far less than the average ARV for a particular neighborhood, assuming that there's REOs and estate sales and things like that. Okay, and there's other types of properties you can get to that don't have to be necessarily in distress, but certainly priced below the ARV for the area. There's room for profit. In other words, room for remodeling and room for profit. So we're going to get back into this after we go through the forms. Just keep in mind that the two main things here are ARV and a 30% spread. That's going to include your profit and your overhead. Okay. All right, let's move down here. You can see the basic warning there. ARV, when you add the cost of purchasing a property to the cost of rehabbing, the total must not exceed 70% of the after repair value. And that's pretty straightforward stuff. All right, I'm going to skip this section here. This is instructions for working with flippers. We're going to go over that again the week after next. Okay, so don't worry that we're skipping through this material. It's just we're going to come back to it. Not next week, but the week after. What we're going to focus on tonight are the forms you use and the forms you're going to be giving to your investors and how you actually use those forms, okay? So let's get down to the first one, which is where I'm getting close to. And again, by the way, let's look at this now and then we'll come back to it. I know you guys are probably wanting to know the basic formula. It is very simple. It's the same wherever you go. Any textbook you look at, it's going to be essentially the same thing. Okay, we know what ARV is already, after repair value. MAO stands for maximum allowable offer. So to calculate your maximum allowable offer, you take your ARV, and we'll give you some examples here. Let's just say it's $200,000, less your 30%. Okay, that's your profit and overhead. That's going to take you down to $140,000. And then less your repairs, whatever you project your repairs to be, that's what we're going to go over tonight. That your resulting number is your maximum allowable offer. In other words, you can't offer any more money than you can afford to pay for the house when you add in remodeling and add in your profit margin and overhead and come up with the ARV. All right. Now, in soft markets, we suggest that you reduce your initial offer, starting offer, by about 15% from the MAO. Now, in tight markets, that might only be 5%. It may be even. Like right now, in most parts of the country, it's a tight market. There are a few exceptions. We have some students on from the Carolinas, and if you're in the Carolinas, you understand at least in North Carolina, there are some soft markets still. They're just soft even from the last recession. So let's look at an example up here. I think I gave one, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is right here. All right. So let's say your ARV is $200,000. That's the average sale price of a good home in whatever neighborhood you're working in, assuming the home is in functional order, up and running, and basically marketable. Okay. You're going to initially take off 30% for profit and overhead. That leaves you a balance of $140,000. All right. So if you have a projected rehab project of $30,000, that means your MAO, your maximum allowable offer, cannot exceed $110,000. So $110,000 purchase price plus 30 remodeling equals $140,000. All right. You add back in your profit margin, 30%, which is essentially $60,000. $60,000 is 30% of $200,000. Okay. You add all the back in reverse, and you get your $200,000. All right. All right. Let me get back down here, and I want to get into some of the forms. And here's the very first one. Before I do, let me check for questions here real quick. I know I just gave you a chunk of information here, so let me see questions. Okay, this is whoops, hang on one second. Let me go back to the attendee list and see who that is. It's probably Gary Simmons. Hey, Gary, how you doing, buddy? This must be your question. Let me go back here. And Gary is brand new. All right. Let's see. Did it start yet? 7:08 p.m. now? Yes, we're started, Gary. We started at 7:05. We're live usually a few minutes before 7. That's Eastern Standard Time. I give everybody a few minutes to log in and get settled, and then we start the recording. Let's see. Nitu, let's see, says there's still lines. Oh, Gary says, okay, got it. Hey, guys, if the lines are, let me know if the lines are still there. We've been recording now for a few moments, and they should be gone. I'd be surprised if they're still there, but if they're still there, I'll call GoToWebinar again. Ken says, nope, they're still there. Okay, that stinks. All right, well, let's keep going here because at least in the past we've been able to go through the material. Let's see. Okay, property inspection report. Now, there's two parts to analysis on flips, the physical analysis it is, right? So 2 forms we're going to use, 2 parts, 2 forms. Part A is going through and doing the inspection. You're not necessarily going to determine the exact cost of things at this phase. You're simply going to do an inspection of the property. Okay? In the second part, which is a separate form, you are going to do all the math. You're going to figure out all of the actual costs by, talking to contractors, getting bids, going to Lowe's, Home Depot, what have you, whatever the case may be. So let's look at the first part here. This is the physical analysis of the looking at flips, right? First things first. You want to think, picture this, all right? Here's how you want to look at this when you're looking at flips. When you're going to look at a property, remember you're only going to be looking at a small handful of properties. You should have done most of your legwork ahead of time on your computer. So this is assuming you're down to the final list of properties to look at, you and your client. Imagine yourself driving down, you turn the corner, you drive down the street that the house is on, just as if you're the end buyer of the property. In other words, think in terms of the person who's going to buy the property after it's remodeled, okay? That's your consumer. That's your ideal consumer. That person's driving down the street. What are they going to see? And you want to follow along doing your initial inspection as if you're the ultimate buyer in what they're going to look at first, what they're going to look at second, what they're going to look at third, okay? And the first thing you're going to see as they drive down the street is the outside of the property, the building and the grounds, the exterior of the building and the grounds, okay? All right, so I want to go through this. I want you to put your pens and pencils down for a moment. You can listen and watch the recording over the next week and take further notes. And the more notes you take, the more you're going to grasp this. You can take notes if you want while I'm doing this, but I promise you, I want you to put on your imaginary hat and imagine the consumer driving down the street. And the first thing you're going to see is the exterior of the property and the landscaping, what we call the curb view. So you're driving you're driving close to the driveway. You generally will stay out on the street and park along the curb, okay? The first thing you're going to see is you're going to look at the landscaping and the outside of the building. But we're going to get granular here, okay? The first thing I want you to do is get out of the car. You're using your imagination here again, all right? Look at the mailbox, okay? It's the closest thing to you, so you start with the closest thing to you, which is the mailbox. If it's leaning over, if it's old, if it's rusted, you just want to make a note of it, write it down, replace mailbox. I mean, we're going to get nitty-gritty here, and you have to get nitty-gritty when it comes to flipping because you don't want to leave anything to chance. I promise you, if you leave little things because you think they're only little things, in the buyer's mind, they're going to be thinking, wow, they didn't replace the mailbox. What else is going to be wrong with this place? Okay? On the other hand, if you put a nice brand new shiny mailbox there, they're going to think, wow, they took care of every little detail. They replaced the mailbox with a brand new mailbox. I can't wait to see what else is going on here. So their mindset, their condition, okay, to look for the good, okay, versus looking for the bad. When they right off the bat see something that's old or rusted or whatever, decrepit, their mindset is going to shift to looking for the negative, okay? That's why you do not want to leave any stone unturned. So again, I'm going to take my time here, and I apologize if I'm digging too deeply, but you need to have this because this is what counts. So first thing's the mailbox, okay? The next thing is either the sidewalk or the driveway or a combination thereof, right? If you have broken, cracked, or peeling concrete, you're going to have to replace that slab, right? There's no questions about it. You're not going to be able to do a good job flipping a house if your driveway's got hunks of concrete missing or it's been peeling apart, you know what I mean, like somebody was sunburned, the skin peels off. That's what it looks like sometimes, exposing the aggregate underneath. Or big cracks, especially where the concrete has been separated by a gap and one side of the gap is higher or lower than the other. That's bad news, okay? So same thing. Sidewalks, just the same thing as driveways. So you're looking at that next. The next you're going to look at is the landscaping. Okay, we're not going to talk about the building yet. We're going to go over the landscaping first. You're going to look at the grass, make your notes on the grass. If you have any dry patches or missing patches of grass that's missing, you're going to have to do some landscaping there. Obviously, you're going to have to get a landscaper, plant new seed or plant new sod somehow or another, make that grass look nice and neat. You're going to also look at the mulch beds, okay? If they have mulch beds, you're probably going to want to do some weeding and put new mulch down, all right? If there's landscaping already there, in other words, if there's already shrubbery and it's not grown too much, you can keep existing shrubbery. You just want to trim it back and cut it back so it looks neat and manageable and is not overbearing. You don't want it to overtake the house. And you know what I'm talking about. If shrubbery gets too big, all of a sudden it dominates the view, it dominates the curb view, the curb appeal, and it can be a little bit of a turnoff. So now at this point, I highly recommend you make a note of if there's any color, any flowers, because if there's not, you want to make a note of that, and I highly recommend that you add some flowers, unless it's like into the middle of the winter and you're in the north and it doesn't make sense, okay? If you're in the South or Southwest in California, you can plant flowers all the time. All right. So, in any case, we're also looking at trees. Look for branches overhanging the roof. You do not want to leave those. I mean, number one, it's bad for the roof, but number two, it looks pretty scary to people when they see broken and cracked limbs on top of the roof hanging down and all that kind of stuff. So some of this stuff can run into a little bit of money. Having somebody cut out and trim back branches can be, depending on who you get, can run into a little bit of money, but it has to be done on a flip. So grass, mulch beds, shrubbery, trees, okay? Now let's assume we're running around behind the property where there's less landscaping typically, but you might find a fence, you might find a shed, you might find a children's playground, like a swing set or a jungle gym kind of thing. I'm going to talk about that for a second. If you have one of those old wooden structures where there's like a fort with a slide and swings, if it's in decent repair, you can keep it, okay? Because your most common client is going to be a middle-class family looking to buy a medium-price home, and they have 2 children, so that might be appealing to them, all right? If it's old and decrepit, I would not try to repair it. I wouldn't even replace it. I'd dig it out and plant grass, okay? It's not worth the expense putting a brand new one in, but if you have to paint it or stain it, that's not a big deal. Tighten up some bolts is no big deal. All right. Now, if you have a shed, that shed better look pretty darn nice. Okay, sheds are a pain in the neck because they generally don't have a very long lifespan. Excuse me. And when they start to look bad, boy, do they look bad. All right. So if you have a shed that's structurally sound, it just has some faded paint, go ahead and paint it and keep it. But if you have a shed where the floor is caving in, the doors are crooked, the roof needs to be replaced, just get rid of the thing. I promise you, just tear it down and get rid of it. It doesn't make any sense to spend money to put a new shed up because you don't know that the person buying the house even want a shed. The fact is, if they don't see a shed there, they'll never miss it because it was never there to begin with. Okay, so all right, sheds. Now fences. I generally don't like fences, but in some parts of the U.S. and Canada, fences are pretty popular, right? And if your fence is in good shape, again, keep it. There's stuff you can get for chain link fences to make them look like they're brand new again. If you have wooden fences and you want to keep it, you're going to have to replace some of the boards. You're going to have to basically restain it or repaint it. In most cases, if it's pretty bad, if it's a pretty bad shape, if the cost to repair it is more than it would be to take it down and replace it, then just tear it down and do not replace it. Okay, fences are not that critical. All right, but that's how I deal with fences. All right, pools. Now, pools are an interesting subject because if you're in, most places in California, San Francisco and South, or you're in Arizona or anywhere around what we call the Sun Belt, a lot of houses have pools. In fact, most houses have pools in some areas like Florida. In Florida, like every house has a pool. Okay, so if you're way up in the north, most houses do not have pools. Okay, and for those of you who've never been to Canada, believe it or not, we have pools in Canada too. All right, so Ontario, the southern part of Ontario, between all the lakes, is actually more temperate than a lot of parts of northern U.S. All right, like New York, for example, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. So in any case, when it comes to pools, here's the deal on pools. They can be a huge pain in the neck. I mean, let's face it. If they're in really good shape, they're nice, and you can clean get the water out of there, put new water in, or just clean out the water that's there, and a pump works. If it has a heater, the heater works. If you're in parts of the country like in Florida where they actually cool the water off, like through refrigeration, if all that stuff works, keep the pool. Okay, but if a lot of that stuff is in bad shape, I mean, the pool itself, it's an in-ground pool and the concrete is cracked or broken, it's not holding water, the pump is missing and not working, or the heater or the cooler. I know a lot of flippers who would just simply break up the concrete, not themselves, but pay someone to do it, cave it all in, fill it in with dirt, and plant grass over it. Okay. Sometimes that's a cheaper, better approach, and the fact is if a pool's not there and people come look at a house, they just assume there's no pool. All right. However, if a pool is there, boy, it better be nice looking, because if it's a mess, if the water has, if the cover, if the pool liner itself has algae on it, things like that, or the water is is green color, people don't like that. It's going to turn them away. That's why pools are such a pain in the butt, because they take regular maintenance, okay, and caring for. Okay, that's enough for the pool. Now let's shift our attention to the building itself. We've looked at the landscaping, and the reason we do that, guys, is that we're already on the outside. We're going to spend time looking at the outside first and look for big ticket items, all right? So we looked at the landscaping already, the yard, the fence, the pool, the shed, the jungle gym, and so forth. Now we're going to look at the building itself, all right? And when you look at the outside of the building, you're generally looking at large, big ticket items. Okay, roofing is expensive, siding is expensive, windows are expensive. So what we're looking for here is obviously what kind of shape is the roof in. And by the way, you do not have to have a ladder to check out a roof. I know that ultimately, if you're going through an inspection, you definitely want somebody to be looking at the roof from being on the roof. However, you can simply get a pair of binoculars, go stand out in the street or the neighbor's yard across the street, go in the backyard, just get different angles to look at the roof through binoculars, okay? You want to look for missing shingles. You want to look for shingles that are curling up, and you want to look for shingles that are pitted. A lot of pitting going on with the shingles. This is for asphalt roofs, by the way. If you see a lot of that, assume a new roof, okay? And you could easily be looking at $400 to $500 a square now. A square is 10 by 10, 100 square feet. It didn't used to be that bad, but labor's gone up, material's gone up. And by the way, the higher the roof, like if you got a 2-story home, or the more steep the pitch, the more expensive it's going to be, because that's risk for the roofers. They're putting themselves at risk, right? So now if you have a slate roof or a tile roof, a little bit different. You don't have to worry about pitting and curling and things like that, but you sure do have to worry about missing tiles or missing slate. Slate is an old technology, but there are still a lot of slate roofs out there. Some people still use it because slate in some parts of the country, in U.S. and Canada, by the way, is readily accessible. I was just in Ireland 2 weeks ago, and they're still building new homes with slate roofs because slate is so abundant over there, right? And slate, by the way, is like a 100-year roof. It's hard to maintain. It takes a special skill. But in any case, you're basically looking to see, is this roof need to be replaced, all right? Also look, by the way, very important, look closely at the chimney. If you've got a brick chimney, look and see if that chimney is leaning sideways or leaning in or leaning out. I've seen chimneys actually collapse, the ones that are leaning out. You're going to look for missing mortar between the bricks, okay, because that can spell danger for a chimney. If you look at the inside and you see the inside of the fireplace is completely coated in creosote, that could be a big deal. That could be a fire hazard, and you might need to get a chimney sweep out there to clean all that out. But if you see a leaning chimney, okay, or chimney missing bricks and a lot of mortar, that could be a huge item. To tear a chimney down and replace it is not a cheap thing, and it could be also very dangerous, right? Okay, the next thing we're going to look at is the foundation. And generally speaking, no matter where you are in the U.S. and Canada, even if you're on a crawl space, you still have a foundation. And in most cases, at least some of the foundation is above ground. It's exposed. It may only be a half of a foot. In some cases, it's 3 feet, depending on where you are in North America, all right? But what you're looking at is the foundation. You're looking for cracks. Now, there's 2 kinds of cracks you're looking for. The first kind of crack is a what's called a step crack, or it's basically it follows the line of the mortar. It doesn't change in width or depth, and the brick on either side of the crack is uniform. It's the same depth and the same height. That's all it is basically we call that basically stepping or step cracks. Not a big deal, okay? However, the other kind of crack is a big deal. If you see a crack in the foundation that's wider at the bottom towards the ground and narrower up towards the top, like towards a window, for example, that generally would indicate a broken footer. A footer is underneath the foundation. If the footer collapses or breaks or separates, that is a big expensive job, and I would generally walk away right there. If you see a potential footer problem, I generally would walk away from the project, all right? However, if you see a crack where it's wider up top and narrow down towards the ground, it's generally not a foundation problem, not a footer problem, but possibly water penetrated, around a door or window opening and got inside there and started pushing things around. Okay, so that's cracks. Okay, I generally don't like wooden exteriors. If I see them, I'm generally going to side over them with vinyl siding. All right, so wood is basically not a good exterior material. People were using it for years, but people today don't like it. All right. Okay, so we're looking at roofing, windows, and doors. Windows, by the way, what we're looking at in windows is we want to see newer vinyl-clad, double-pane, double-hung windows. Wooden windows are okay if they're new, if they're contemporary and they're double-pane. Maybe they're wooden on the inside and vinyl clad on the outside. I've seen a lot of those, and that's okay too. You're basically looking for modern windows, contemporary design, contemporary construction. If you have the old wooden sash windows, be aware, especially the ones with single panes. They generally require a lot more maintenance and repairs over time, and they would generally be a bigger turnoff for newer consumers. People buying hoops that have been remodeled do not want to see older wooden sash windows, right? Single pane windows. Doors, on my exterior doors, I like to see steel insulated doors. Okay, not wooden doors. I know they can look better, but steel insulated door is not going to warp on you. It's not going to crack. It just needs to be painted, and they're generally more secure too. They generally have metal frames, and they're very secure compared to wooden doors, right? So that's the outside of the building: roofing, siding, windows, foundation, doors. All right. Let's say now you're walking back to the front, and you walk up to the front door. The first thing you're going to see and touch is the doorknob. All right. So again, if the door is presentable, you can keep it. If it's not, replace it. Don't ever shortcut on doors. Okay, especially exterior or interior doors. You're definitely usually going to replace the doorknob wherever you are. Unless they're brand new, you're going to replace them. Put brand new doorknobs on there. Okay. Now you open up the door and finally walking in the house. Hallelujah. Okay. The first thing we do is we don't go look at the kitchens and bathrooms. I know that's tempting, but what you're going to do first, guys, is go down into the basement, or depending on where you are in North America, sometimes you don't have a basement, sometimes you have a crawl space, sometimes you don't even have that. Sometimes you're just on a slab, and if that's the case, you want to go to the utility area of the house. You're going to look at the furnace, the air conditioning, the water heater, and the electrical, which we'll cover here in a second. Hang on a second here. There he goes. Reading, I'm not sure what that means. I don't want to do that. Okay. Electrical is later on. Yep. Okay, so first things first. On the furnace, if you have a forced air gas furnace, you want to test it out and check it and make sure it works. It should look pretty new. The reason you want to check it out is you want to look for potential cracked heat exchanger. That could be you generally have to replace the furnace when you have a cracked heat exchanger. All right. And the way you can tell is if you turn the furnace on and it makes a loud boom, that's a good indicator you've got a cracked heat exchanger. All right. If you have a boiler, okay, you're looking to look at the boiler itself, the actual tank. It's basically a square box, sometimes a rectangular box, and the reservoir is inside there. If the reservoir has cracked, okay, generally the sides of the tank will be bowed out. Okay. Another thing you're looking for is any signs of rusting or oxidation, like white chalky stuff or green chalky stuff. Things like that. I want to make sure that furnace works, whether it's a hot water system or a first air gas furnace. I want to make sure it works well. If I'm not completely satisfied with it, and you'll know it because it's going to look really new. Okay. If it's old and old jalopy, assume you're going to replace it. Just mark it down. Old, rust, oxidation, all that stuff is present, okay? If you're lucky and you can test it out, by all means, test out the HVAC. In other words, test out the heating and air conditioning, right? You're also going to look at the water tank. And what I look at water tanks is this. There's two rims on a water tank. The upper rim, there's a cap, okay? You've got the tank itself, you got a cap on top, and you got a cap on the bottom, a bottom plate. Where they meet the tank itself, around the perimeter is obviously where the metal meets the metal. It's like a ring, and if you look around that ring and you see signs of rust or again oxidation, what that could indicate is a cracked lining. In other words, the water tank is cracked on the inside, and if that's the case, you just replace it. Now, they're not expensive. I mean, you can replace a water tank easily for $600 right now, okay? In case you're looking at the water tank, now sometimes you have, in some parts of the country, you have a different type of heating. You might have electric radiators, okay? You might have radiant heating coming from the floor, subsurface floor heating. I've seen that where there's tubes with oil running through it. Matter of fact, one of my sisters has a house like that in upstate New York. But regardless, there's always a system. There's always a mechanical system, okay? Except for the electric baseboards, that's just simply electric, and they're easy to test. You just turn them on, all right? Any case, we finished looking at the utilities. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go through and start looking at the money rooms, okay? Money room being kitchens and bathrooms. Let's start with that. Before I do, let me take a quick pause here and look for questions. So hang on one second. Okay, let's see. Ken has a question. All right. Starting offer should be MAO less 15% in soft markets. Given we don't, oops, let me go back here. Sorry, Kent, I'm just going to get back to the beginning of your question. Okay, given we don't have that, where should that discount be? All right, so Kent, yeah, in a tight market, you generally want to keep it like 5% below MAO. Now, I'm going to violate one of my own rules here. Let's say you're in a tight market and you have valuation increases that are moving along pretty well. In other words, your average values are increasing 5 or 10% per year. In some parts of the country, I go to California a lot, down around Laguna Beach. At least last time I checked, they were still appreciating after the recession, post-recession, 15% per year. I mean, when Phoenix turned around, heck, Phoenix was going up 50% per year on average. There were neighborhoods that were literally doubling in a matter of months. But that's cooled off now. They have more normal rates. But so in any case, Kent, back to your question, if you have a tight market and you have rapid valuation increases, you don't want to do a discount at all. And here's where I'm going to go against my own advice is you may want to start out at your MAO and even maybe go up a little bit, because if your price is going up that rapidly, you've got a little bit of room there. You've got a little bit of cushion. I just don't recommend it unless you feel pretty confident in your marketplace, right? Let's see here. Kent says, okay, composite roof for 5,000 square foot, 50-year warranty, equals 83,000 versus cedar, 99.6K. Yeah, 50-year warranty. There are roofs now that have 50-year warranties, and they're definitely going to run you a lot of money. But let's face it, if you've got a roof that'll last you 50 years, heck, that's pretty darn good. Also, that's variable. It depends on what part of the country you're in. If you're in Middle America, I mean, you're doing asphalt shingles with a standard 25-year roof. You can still. It just depends. You can still get them. Now, 5,000 square feet. That's 50 square. That's a big roof. And I would definitely price those no matter what. Okay, let's see here. Ron says lines are now gone. Well, that's interesting. Heck, we're halfway through here and the lines are finally gone. Thanks, Ron, for telling me that. Okay, back to the form here. We're going to go into the money rooms. We're going to go into the kitchens. And I know it's going to seem obvious, guys, but your kitchen needs to stand out. And it's not that hard to do. There's some good news here is a lot of times you don't have to replace all the cabinetry in the kitchen. If you have a basic good set of cabinetry, in other words, the base cabinets and the wall cabinets are in sound shape, you can replace the door and drawer fronts and the knobs and the countertops. Basically give it a facelift, and also the sink and the faucet. It'll look like a brand new kitchen. Matter of fact, people will assume it's new because you got new door and drawer fronts, new countertops, new faucets, and new sink. But generally speaking, if you have an old kitchen that's, say, 25, 30 years old and you're flipping a home, you're going to want to replace that kitchen, all right? And I know some of you may find it shocking, but you can get a pretty darn nice kitchen. In a 12 by 12 foot kitchen, you can replace that for about $10,000. You don't have to you don't have to pay full retail and get the top of the line, okay? You definitely want to make sure your appliances are in sync as far as a brand name, age, and color. If you've got a cream color refrigerator and a black stove and a white microwave and dishwasher, you're in trouble. You're going to have to replace those, put brand new appliances in, make sure they all match up, and you can actually do that for about $2,000. You can put in a brand new refrigerator, brand new stove, brand new dishwasher, brand new microwave for about $2,000 in the average medium price home right now across North America. I know a lot of you are thinking, boy, I wish I could do that for my own home. And the answer is you can. Okay? I generally like Kenmore appliances. They last a long time. They're sturdy. They look good. And Sears stands behind them. Kenmore stands behind their appliances 100%. So in any case, one of the things you can learn to do is keep track throughout the year. Every week, look at your Sunday paper and look at the ads, okay? And make a chart. This is what I used to do. Keep a chart of the prices throughout the year and when the best sales were. So when you're flipping a home or you're in the business of flipping homes and you have some storage space somewhere, I would actually buy appliances and store them. Okay, if I knew I was getting appliances at half price, well, you better believe I'm gonna get a couple of them and keep them in storage, right? And use them for my upcoming jobs. But in any case, make sure your appliances are in sync, all right? On your flooring, and we'll get into this more a little bit later on in the next section, but I want to just give you an idea here. Flooring today in flips, you don't want to use vinyl flooring. Use tile, or if you're going to want the wood look, use a laminate. Okay, we'll get into more of that here in a few minutes. So hang on to your hats. Okay, electrical system. There's more to electrical than this. You have your electrical panel, you have your service line coming from the street, and you have your meter socket outside. All of those need to be in good repair. In fact, if the line outside is frayed, you generally won't pass an inspection, and you got to replace that line. And when you replace that line, in most cases around North America now, they make you replace the meter socket at the same time. And also, if you replace the meter socket, guess what? You got to replace the panel on the inside. So you could be looking at easily, $1,500, $2,000 just to replace the panel, the service line, and the meter socket. Okay, but when you open up your panel, okay, your breaker panel, what you want to see are the least newer breakers, the flip switch kind, okay? If you see old glass fuse breakers, I know you're in an older part of North America, and that will turn people off. You want to replace that panel with a panel that has breakers, okay? I know you'll see some panels with some push button breakers. I generally would replace those too. They are grounded for the most part, but they're old, okay? So you want a new panel with the new breakers in there, all right? When it comes to lighting and electrical, you're simply at this point just making a note. Is the lighting look new, or does it look decent and good repair? If it is, you can keep it. If not, you replace it. We'll price that stuff later on, by the way. Okay, plumbing in kitchens. Well, let's talk about the before we get into the plumbing itself. I don't think there's a separate category here. Let's see. Hang on one second. Let me see if I can scroll down. Yep, that's it. All right, let me go back here to where I was, built-in appliances. Here we go, plumbing. All right, before we talk about the inside plumbing, let's talk about the bathrooms, because we already talked about the kitchens. In bathrooms, same kind of thing. You want decent cabinetry. You want a decent-looking tub, a decent-looking toilet. Toilets only cost a few $100s to replace. If your toilet looks old and it's dingy and faded and scratched, just replace it, okay? With a tub, some good news there. If you got an old cast iron tub, you can actually reglaze it for about $400. That's the average around North America. That's what we're seeing. A tub reglazer worth of salt will do the reglazing for $400. It'll look like it's brand new. If you can't do that, you're going to have to replace the tub, and that can get expensive. You may be looking at $2,000 just to replace the tub. It's that complex, all right? If you can keep the old tub by reglazing it, by all means do it, and put up a new surround, basically a tile surround, okay? And obviously a new bathroom sink cabinet with a countertop and sink and faucet, and new medicine cabinet too, by the way. Now the plumbing itself, right? The actual piping. You've got your supply lines, hot and cold, and you've got your waste line. All right. Copper is okay, but I like the new PEX lines. They've been around now for quite a while, and they're a lot more durable, particularly if you're in the northern parts of U.S. and Canada. The PEX can freeze and thaw a number of times, and it won't deteriorate, it won't crack or break like copper will. Copper will actually break on you. It could be a big problem. And on the waistlines, I'm looking for basically the newer ABS. Okay, in other words, the plastic, not cast iron, not anything, not copper, not anything, just basically the plastic. All right. So, all right, windows. We kind of talked about that already. When it comes to windows, if they're decent, newer contemporary design, in other words, double pane, double hung, vinyl clad, and the locks work and the windows go up and stay up and go down and stay down, I'm probably going to keep them. All right. But if any of those things don't work, if they're old, if the windows don't lock together because they're gotten out of shape, or they're faded, or there's any rust or condensation, I'm going to replace them. All right. And if you replace windows, unfortunately, you're going to have to replace all of them because you want them all to match all the way around the house. All right. So in any case, the only thing we haven't looked at yet so far is what's left. Doorknobs, light switch plates, outlet plates, carpeting. Carpeting is pretty simple. If it's not new, I'm going to replace it. I know that seems harsh, but I don't want to try to sell a house that has faded carpet, matted carpet, or carpet that has a color that's out of style. I want good new plush carpet that stands up and has a good pile, okay, and looks appealing to the eye. That's very important. When people walk on it, believe me, they're gonna notice it as soon as they walk through the door, and plus they're gonna walk on it. Kitchens and bathrooms, I like tile. I do like wooden floors. Sometimes people ask me, what about the wood? I like wood in dining rooms and living rooms, and that's probably about it. I don't generally like it in the bedrooms because more people like carpeting in bedrooms than do like hardwood. Okay, let me go down here. Now we're at the we've gone through the inspection. This is our inspection report, all right? That's part one. Part two is this, and I know we're getting short on time here, so guys, this next part does not take that long. All you're going to do here is you're going to take all of your homework from your inspection report. This case is either going to be you or your client, depending on if you're investing or you're helping your client invest. You're going to come down here, basically put in all the demographics of the property, all right? And here's where we're going to put in your estimated costs. And there's a lot of other costs. You've got you shouldn't have any architectural fees in most cases for flipping, but you might have some legal fees, county fees. If you've got a loan, if you bought the property with a loan, you've got some loan fees. You're going to add up all those fees, the holding costs of the property. You're going to owe taxes on the property while you own it. All right. Then we're going to start pricing everything. And it's easy to do, and I can give you a sample pricing sheet. In fact, I think I do in the program. But remember, those prices, once they're printed, they're static. That's stuff changes all the time. But essentially, you're going to price everything in the kitchen, cabinetry. If you're doing that, all your appliances. Okay. Now, at your kitchen, you have a kitchen total, right? Go into your bedrooms. You might have 4 bedrooms in this case and 3 bathrooms. Add up the total. Lighting, light switch, outlet plates, carpeting, doorknob, closet door, painting. You want to paint, by the way, every single wall surface. So paint, carpet, add all those up, right? Per bedroom and per bathroom, and all the other rooms. You're going to add up all the costs for repairing all those rooms. Now, here's one thing I want to point out here. I like seeing estimates done in 2 different ways. One way is by room. That's why we have this chart here. You plug in the values per room, so you have a per room estimate. And then I also like a per component estimate. In other words, overall, how much for painting the whole house? Overall, how much for carpeting the whole house? Overall, how much for providing windows for the whole house? In other words, that's a different view as opposed to a per room view. And the 2 should crossfoot at the end. And you should be able to look for holes or opportunities to save money. Okay. So that's what you're going to do with this the rehab form. So the first form was an inspection form. Second form was a rehab form where you put in your total costs, the cost of a new heating system, cost of plumbing, whatever the case is. You might not be doing all these things. You might just be doing a few of them, but you're going to put in the cost that your contractor is giving you, what your material costs are, labor costs, the whole 9 yards. You want it broken down. Again, I like to see it by component myself in my room. So you add all that up. All right, we're not going to worry about financing right here for the sake of this 1 hour session, but essentially you're going to add up all your costs, okay? And you know what your purchase price was. You know what we know what your after repair value is. We know what your profit margin is. You should be able to estimate your gross profit. So what I did now, guys, is I provided a sample in the material of a completed rehab sheet, right, broken down by component. And I added up all the figures for item cost and labor and the total cost. You can see interior paint in this case, or interior carpeting, excuse me, is $7,000. Interior paint, $2,000. Kitchen didn't need to be fully remodeled. I just simply replaced the countertop, door and drawer fronts, sink, and that was $2,500. All right. Let's see here. Some other things. Interior doors cost me $1,250. In any case, use this as a model of a completed rehab sheet, and you can see the total rehab cost for this project was $28,000. I actually came within $100 of this estimate on this property. Okay. In other words, I think it was just under $28,100. That was the total cost of the rehab for that project. All right, let me take a quick pause here and look for more questions before we go back to the MAO. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, hey, Kent, I'm looking at your questions again, or your comments again on the roofing. Kent, if I was you, I would join your local RIA group and get familiar with some of the contractors, some other investors, and find out who they use, and you'll get some good referrals for roofers there, and see if you can't beat some of these costs. I mean, some of these costs, even for me, and I've seen a lot, seem to be pretty high. I would never really put a cedar roof on a flip, because in most cases you're going to be flipping medium price homes to middle class families. That's the strong part of your market, and they just basically have asphalt shingle roofs. Okay. So in any case, let's see, 5,000 square feet. That's like 50 by 100, and that's a lot of roof. In most cases you'll be at like half of that, right? And your warranty is going to be maybe 25 years, something like that. So, okay, let me go back here, guys, and we will continue and get close to the end. I think I broke this down. Yeah, I actually did. This was an old flip years ago, and I basically hit my profit margin spot on. It was a $75,000 ARV, and again, this goes back some years. Purchased for $25,000, remodeled for $25,000, and actually bought it for about $20,000, remodeled for about $28,000, and sold the thing for $75,000 and made myself a handsome profit of $25,000. And in fact, the guy that bought it lived across the street. It turns out the house was originally his sister's house. She had passed away. Her son, who was this gentleman's nephew, was forced to move away. The guy felt bad. He decided he wanted to buy the house back so his son could live in it, his nephew could live in it, excuse me. And he saw that I purchased it, saw that I started remodeling it right away, decided he's going to let me do the remodeling and he'll just pay my price, because it turns out he was in construction, and the last thing he wanted to do was come home and drive more nails. So literally, I'm putting the sign in the yard. He walks over and says, "Hey, I'd like to talk to you about the house." And I said, "Great." He said, "I'm the neighbor." And I said, "That's interesting." And he said, "Yeah, I didn't want to do the work myself. I figured I'd let you do it. Can I see what kind of work you did?" And I said, "Sure." Took him inside. And he liked it, and he said, "What would you like for the place?" I wanted $75,000, so I told him I want $80,000. He said, "How about 75?" And I said, "Sold." And literally sold it in 5 minutes. And by the way, that was right. That was the last flip I did. It was right before an economic downturn. In any case, all right, back to the ARV. We're going to finish up with this. We're going to finish where we started. All right. You have to be comfortable with what your ARV is for the area. It's essentially your market value, perceived fair market value for a medium price home, 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, some cases it's 3-bedroom, 2-bath, whatever the case is. What is that medium price home for your area? Is that's what you should be flipping. And what are houses selling for in that neighborhood and similar neighborhoods in a remodeled state? And that's important because, if you're competing with other resales and they're not remodeled, your house will be worth a little bit more. Not a lot more. I mean, you can push the market by about 10%. In a tight inventory market with price escalations, you generally can push the market by about 10%. Okay, but I wouldn't get more aggressive than that because you might end up not meeting your profit margin and being somewhat disappointed. Okay, so essentially ARV is what the place should sell for when it's all done being remodeled. Subtract off your 30% for profit and overhead, roughly 20% profit, roughly 10% overhead. All right, then you subtract your repairs, and that resulting number is your MAO, maximum allowable offer. All right. So that's pretty much it, guys. Next week, and if you look in your material, you'll see there's a further description of this example here. And I actually give you the history. Bought it for 25 grand, like I said, remodeled it for 25 and sold the thing for 75. All right. Okay, let me check for questions here before we wrap things up. Remember, no webinar next week. The week after, we're getting into the specific instruction on how do you work with flippers one week and how do you work with landlords the next week. That's the nitty-gritty in the field, on the job, specific information you need so that your client is successful and so that you're successful working with your client. Okay, let me check for questions here one more time before we wrap it up. And while I'm looking, I just want to tell you guys thanks again for being online. I appreciate your participation. We're going to go through these next couple of sections here over the next month or so, and then we'll likely jump back into some marketing probably towards the second half of August, okay? So in any case, you guys have a wonderful rest of the week, an awesome weekend. You've all got my phone number and my email. I know, let's see, who is it? We've got a one-on-one, Boydcast. We have a one-on-one coming up with Boyd. If you're into the marketing and you need to have a strategy call, please let me know. And this is Gary. Thanks, Gary, for your feedback. I appreciate it. Welcome aboard, by the way, Gary. All right, you guys have a wonderful night. God bless you all, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.